The paradox of ritual. One of the most intriguing paradoxes in the teachings of Jesus is the place of religious rituals. On the one hand, Jesus participated in Jewish rituals. He attended synagogues, celebrated feasts, and even instructed the leper he healed to go to the priest and offer what the law of Moses required. Yet, at the same time, Jesus boldly prioritized human need and spiritual truth over ritual observance. This paradox becomes especially clear in moments where Jesus seemingly breaks tradition in favor of love, mercy, or deeper understanding. Consider his disciples picking grain on the Sabbath, Mark 2:23-28. When questioned, Jesus replied, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." This declaration is revolutionary. It reframes the purpose of religious law. The ritual exists to serve humanity, not the other way around. If a ritual fails to serve its divine purpose, it can be set aside. Another powerful example is Jesus' teaching on clean and unclean food. In Mark 7:15, he says, "Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them." Mark even notes, "In saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean." Mark 7:19. In other words, Jesus overturned centuries of religious dietary law with one spiritual insight. Moral and spiritual purity begins in the heart, not on the plate. This principle also applies to rituals introduced by Jesus himself, such as the Lord's Supper or communion. Many Christians instinctively place great reverence on the act of breaking bread and drinking wine in remembrance of Christ. And rightly so. Jesus instituted this practice on the night he was betrayed, saying, "Do this in remembrance of me." Luke 22:19. However, if we follow Jesus' logic, even this sacred ritual should be weighed not by its form, but by its purpose and spiritual fruit. Imagine a disciple of Jesus who spends 2 hours each day in deep reflection, prayer, and love-driven service. Over 6 days, that's 12 hours of communion with God and with others in spirit. In contrast, the formal ritual of communion might last 15 minutes, with minimal inner engagement. What, then, is the greater act of remembrance? The spirit matters more than the form. This isn't to devalue communion. It remains meaningful, communal, and symbolic. But Jesus himself said in John 4:24, "God is spirit, and his worshippers must worship in the spirit and in truth." The external form must flow from inward truth. Otherwise, it is just noise. There's another layer to this paradox. Rituals can be performed by people who do not truly believe. Anyone can partake of bread and wine, but not everyone can genuinely commune with Christ in spirit. This raises a difficult but important question. Is the ritual still meaningful if it does not reflect inward reality? Jesus addressed this concern with words like, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules." Matthew 15:8-9, quoting Isaiah. His issue wasn't the ritual itself, but the absence of heart. Still, it would be unwise to abolish rituals entirely. Jesus never outright canceled Jewish ceremonies, though he often bypassed or reinterpreted them. In fact, he seemed to allow them to fade by contrast rather than through confrontation. Rituals serve an important social and psychological role. They bring communities together, mark sacred moments, and help people enter a spiritual mindset. At our current stage of human development, we may still need such symbols. The danger lies not in using rituals, but in confusing them with the reality they represent. Paul echoes this idea when he calls the rituals of the Old Covenant a shadow of the things to come, but the substance belongs to Christ. Colossians 2:17. A shadow isn't evil, it's just not the thing itself. The same applies to modern Christian rites. They are beautiful and valuable, but only insofar as they direct us toward Christ, not away from Him. So, how do we live this out? First, we honor rituals, but don't idolize them. We remember that Jesus allowed ritual to yield to mercy, Matthew 12:7. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Second, we keep asking, is this practice drawing me closer to God, to truth, to love? And third, we leave room for Spirit-led freedom. As Jesus said, the wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. John 3:8. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. In a world still deeply attached to external forms of worship, the teaching of Jesus calls us deeper. It invites us to see rituals not as gates to God, but as windows, transparent and temporary. The heart of worship is always within. The more we practice this paradox, the freedom of form and the supremacy of love, the closer we move to the vision Jesus had for us, worshipers in spirit and truth, free from fear, anchored in love.